Good morning, everyone, and what a great morning it is. Monday morning, morning coffee or tea with American Scouser. I am your host, as always, Simochin with the Polish Prince here. I got the coffee. It's Monday. Normally,
Not
grumpy would be in
grumpy.
effect. Not today, my friends. No grumpy this morning. It's green and loving it, or red and loving it, you name it. But yeah, Polish Prince is with us with his version
Such a good morning. I made new coffee.
fresh coffee for
Fresh
this day.
coffee
Well
today.
deserved. Well deserved indeed. Yeah, I mean, what a morning it is. Alan is with us. Good morning, Alan. It was one of those like you woke up. I think I had the same feeling after the 5-0 game. Not as much after the 4-0 game, but definitely after the 5-0 game, where you woke up and your initial thing was like, did that fucking happen? Holy shit, it did happen. So where are you at with that? Tell us where you're at.
It's it's just it's something else. I mean, I just spent so much time just watching the same highlights over and over, and then watching in all different sorts of commentary. And then my fiance being like, "Why do you watch the game? Why do you keep looking at this stuff? Like, how can you not keep looking at it?" Was just my response, and I feel like, especially for us, we went to Paris back in August, and we went to the Cop Bar in Paris, and we watched the United Liverpool game there, where they lost 2-1. So for me, it was just it felt right. Like they sort of ruined my Paris trip a little bit. United did. So they deserved this. They deserved all of it.
They deserve all of it and that more. I mean, I was telling you before the show, my brother, who I talk about often, and he's a United fan, and we do also do like a podcast for fan watching together. And on Saturday, I was not able to watch. Well, I watched the game, but on my phone and stuff. We were downtown in Chicago for Layla's college visit, so we were supposed to do it yesterday after the game, and I was like, oh man, if the best score is bad, I don't know if I want to sit with this asshole and talk soccer for like an hour. But when that happened, man, I could not wait for a podcast. But he was nowhere to be found. Could never get a hold of him. Sparky is still in shock. I mean, like I say, when I woke up, I was like, did that fucking happen? And I checked my message with my brother. I was like, yes, it did happen. And I can still continue rubbing it in. Happy day, says Ryan. Yes, it is. I mean, it's just one of those. United puts a smile on you. United and Everton, where would we be without them? But yeah, it was kind of like a weird game. I was like nervous. I mean, I talked about it last Monday. I was not too confident going into it, but do we, for the first time, I mean, it was almost like bringing sexy back. Like we went back like 2 years in time. We played like how we used to play, and United showed in some ways. I mean, as a United fan, and we'll talk about that a little bit, I know Edip is worried about certain things that you saw, because it was flashbacks of the old United, from talking quad and stuff, which I don't think. I mean, like I say, like a realistic guy like my brother never even like would use the word quad.
Yeah.
But there were some like delusional fans riding the wave saying like, why not? Why the hell not? And stuff like that. So this is why not, and it almost gives a glimpse of the United of the past.
Yeah, and I think we have to remember that even though Ten Hag has brought in some new players, the big core of that group is still the same players that were there several years ago, right? When you have the likes of Dalot and you have the likes of Bruno, and then McTominay who came in, and then Rashford, De Gea, you have a big chunk of guys who had already been there throughout all of that. So to see them possibly regress isn't a total shock. I mean, I'm just so perplexed that 3-0, 4-0, fine, take a beating, go home. It is what it is. But to not put 11 guys behind the ball after 4 or 5, and to not have any sort of, the players just didn't want to play. They just didn't even want to be there anymore. There was just, I feel like as fans, I think we appreciate the rivalry more than those players do right now, at least for United, on the United side, because for them, they're just like, whatever, especially the last couple years, it's just not, they don't even show up for the fixture anymore. So I think on the fan side, we find it a bit more of a rivalry than they do at this point. So maybe this was sort of the wake up that they really needed for them. I mean, hope not, but it kind of brought them back down to reality. They've been playing. Not going to make excuses for them. Obviously, it's United, but
That is their excuse. They're United. Yeah.
yeah. they've been playing every 3 days, and so you kind of felt like this was going to happen at some point. The wheels were going to come off. It's just fantastic that they came off at Anfield in the fashion that it did, because it really, if anything else happens in this season, we've had some wonderful moments to remember, and it's not just going to be one of those seasons that's just filled with just misery.
And I think, I don't know, like some of the things that I see that I would be worried about is how a player like Anthony reacts to things and his lack of defensive work, despite us not coming from that side a lot. I think, Robertson had a lot of fun with him. That was like a good matchup, actually, going back and forth to watch that. But Fernandez, I think, is like the biggest guy. I mean, I talked to my brother. I just sent him the clip earlier of how he just freaking like gave up on a challenge where I was pissed off as a guy, like as a fan of the sports and knows what captaincy means. If your captain does that, what are you supposed to do? I mean, he's the guy that's supposed to bring in the fight. I would rather see my captain go into like a Milner-like challenge and get a yellow in a case like that, saying like, I'm freaking pissed off. You guys should be pissed off too. Instead of like, what do you got? I mean, not only he like didn't like made like a half-ass challenge and was it basically walks by him, and he just turned around and started literally walking the other way. It would be one thing not to come back. There we go. When you say Bruno, you can see Bickler's ears blinking. He was like, someone say Bruno? Like,
we don't talk about Bruno. That's why.
So he's like, I've been a Bruno apologist, always felt he had that win at all costs, man. That's why I said. That being said, Ten Hag rewarded him with the armband and backfired massively. Yes, there is no excuse for socking with 30 minutes left. Arm waving. I mean, he's a 9-year-old who cries during a game because he hasn't learned how to lose gracefully. And that's the thing with him. But more than that, he's the freaking captain. And I think that shows lack of leadership in that team. Like not having, I don't know, if I'm Ten Hag, I know maybe Fernandez is the more long-term player there, but why wouldn't you give the captaincy to a player like Varane, who's been there, done that, won, lost? And I don't know if you guys saw this, but at the end of after the game, Varane was screaming his head off at the other players walking away to get their ass to the away fans, whoever was left there.
Right.
And I think it means even more. You should thank him double because they
were still there
till the end and watched it there. I'm shocked that it was like, who wants to? It's like going back to like the 9-year-old in the U10. Like there's a different captain every week. Why don't you be captain this week? I mean, and like give him the band. I just don't understand the thinking behind making him the captain one. And then we'll talk about why the hell he's on the left. That's another thing.
It might be part of just, in a way, seniority, just having him that he was there before. And so that was maybe part of the decision why to award him. And maybe, we don't know. We don't know what happens on the training ground, right? He might be a really great leader off this moment or away from this moment on the training ground. And that's something that Ten Hag sees because those are moments that we don't get to be part of, nor do we care to be a part of. So I think, if anything, it's just Eric rewarding him for being able to be around for all those tumultuous management changes and still kind of being the player that he is. Because on his day, he is a great player. But yeah, it's the attitude that it just, at this point, I think we kind of realized, I know someone brought up the whole Xhaka situation and telling Arsenal fans to fuck off, but that was different. You had the fans turning on you, and it was not a good moment overall. This is much different than that. This is just giving up. This is. Oh, that would have been a cool transition.
That would have been a cool transition. Let me help you with that transition.
This right here. This is the moment where you're like, okay, that's done. Why?
At least walk back.
Yeah, just
he started walking the other way.
Nope. 18-year-old kid, send him home.
And you have, who's that? Elanga on the left, I think, like running past him to help defend. And
no, it was Malacia.
Oh, is that Malacia?
Yeah, because
is that who that is?
Yeah, it's Malacia because he went up. I'm pretty sure it was Malacia, right?
Either way, he's like, well, let me run, I guess, since the captain is decided not to track back on that site. He literally, like, you can see him like coming. If you go, hold on, go back a little bit, it shows like him, like initially
Yeah,
he's kind of jogging,
he's not
and
even
then
in
he
the
sees the
picture.
captain not moving. He's like, well, I guess I'm fucking
Yeah,
running
he's
back.
not even in the picture, and then he's like, okay,
Oh
well,
shit.
all right.
And let's go to that because Big Bear's talking about that. I thought it was shocking, and it's almost like we talk about this about Pep at times. We have not seen it from Ten Hag, where it's almost like overthinking over like tactical work or something like that. Why would you? I mean, simple basics would be like, where does Liverpool suffer the most? Where does our hottest player normally play right now? Oh yeah, this should be great. I mean, it was like a matchup made in heaven for them. And informed Rashford could run crazy on that side, and nope. They're like, why don't we put Rashford in the middle? Put Fernandez, who doesn't have that much speed there. So even first of all, he's not good at timing those runs. A couple of times he tried them, he was off. And then you would think if Rashford gets the opportunity that Fernandez did, he's the finisher. He would have probably done better with it. Is that overthinking it on Ten Hag's part, you think?
It has to be because we expected Trent to fight Rashford. That was one thing that we were thinking about. Like, hey, if anything goes south in this game, we're probably going to expect it to come from the left with the form that Rashford is in, and sometimes the moments that Trent gets lost. That's going to be where the game is won and lost. And so it was absolutely baffling to not see Rashford on that left side. And I felt like because of that too, the way that they pressed and they would, whenever you'd see one of the center backs, whether it was Van Dijk or Konate with the ball, you'd have Rashford go up to press one of them, and then you'd have either Antony or Fernandez, whichever the opposite side that isn't being pressed would come up to press. And that was broken so easily. Just a little ball to Robbo or Trent every single time. And I think that was one thing that Ten Hag didn't adjust in the second half either. They kind of felt, I know there's some Discord chat about which team was better in the first half. I think United had their moments. Had that Bruno header gone in that went just wide, I think things could have been very different. So United definitely had a few chances. I don't want to say that they were better in the first half, but it's not like it was overwhelmingly one side or another. So Ten Hag didn't really make any changes at all, and so I feel like it might have been a classic case of overthinking. But I mean, it shouldn't have been because, like you said, this is just like any other field. There's grass, there's air. What's there to overthink? It's just another field.
I almost thought, there was a lot of talk about that. Like Ten Hag, even after the game, he said, I don't know if they were necessarily the better team. They were able to create the better chances, maybe. But when you looked at that game, even the commentators who, by the way, I don't want to even go back to the Wolves game, but what the fuck was that? That was like when you watch NBA from like a local broadcast, could it be more biased? It sounded like the Wolves broadcast. But anyway, let's go back to this one. I thought, you could see from the beginning of the game, I know it's a cliche, but like who wanted it more? Like
Right.
who was getting to the second balls and who was more aggressive? And I know being home and having the crowd behind you and stuff like that helps. But I mean, when I was watching the first half, even when it was 0-0, I was kind of happy with what we were doing. We were not maybe creating yet, but you could kind of see that at least you had you had the will and the desire from the team, which is what you want to see. I don't care what the final score is. That's what I want to see, that they do want to win. Sometimes it doesn't pan out. I mean, you're not going to win every single game. By the way, Zahid says he's just a Freddie Mercury wannabe. And, Freddie is turning in his grave because of that analogy. I think, come on. Not even close. Not even close. Not with that nose. But anyway, Dickler says Anthony absolutely killed him. And yeah, like Dalot ended up playing out of position. That's how the first goal kind of comes as well. Anthony is that guy who kind of looks like he's pressing and running hard up top, but then he's not really tracking back. He's just doing that. And once you get around him, it's game over. What do you think? Because he was a guy that was we talked about new guys, old guys. Well, he's one of the new guys and did not seem like he's a good fit.
He's definitely someone that can take a lot of heat from this game just for lack of energy, lack of commitment, lack of whatever you want to use. And then, like you mentioned, having those moments where where he kind of just lashes out. I kind of had those against Robbo, had that moment where he was kind of emotionally just got the best of him. And I think to Bickler's point, that was part of, I think, what's really special about Gakpo and being able to see the slight evolution from Bobby to Gakpo, because Gakpo was able to play, kind of come inside, or not come, able to play near midfield and bring Dalot up to Robbo or to Gakpo essentially, and Antony wouldn't be tracking back. So, and that's why they had to play so much on that left-hand side. But Antony, offensively, of course, he's good, right? I mean, he had that shot in the first 8 minutes. That I almost said Bickler had to save, that Allison had to save. Bickler wouldn't be saving that. That would have side netting there for sure.
Bickler is sipping the Guinness, from a can as that ball is going into the corner there. So.
I couldn't get to it. It's fine.
Anybody have a glass? I guess I'm not supposed to drink from a can.
So we see it working offensively, at least, and I know that being from the Dutch league, of course, Ten Hag has some of the guys that he likes that have come over with him, and maybe it will take a bit more time to see maybe more of that commitment from Antony. But where it stands, someone like Elanga might have actually put in a little bit more effort on that right side to get back and track back a little bit. So maybe, I don't know if he's not necessarily a good fit, but he definitely was not a good fit for yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, the way they came out, it just made no sense with Rashford being in the middle. I mean, the funniest thing, and this was my biggest, I swear, this was my biggest fear. And as the game kicked off, I remembered this. And I was like, no fucking hell. Weghorst, who we were making fun of with my brother in, like, when he was in Turkey playing for Besiktas, because, when he first got signed, they were like, oh, like, they got like a solid, this is the kind of striker Fenerbahce should be getting, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, we were like, man, this guy is brutal. He's just like a big log in the middle. Like, he can't really move. He can't really make as many runs, create space and stuff like that. And when United got him, I told my brother, he was like, get the fuck out of here. I'm like, dude, seriously, you guys got they call him like, like a daddy striker, like a big time guy back home. Like, that's the phrase. And I was like, oh, you guys got the daddy striker. He's like, who? And I tell him Weghorst, he's like, get the fuck out of here. And I was like, nope, you got him, buddy. Enjoy. He's like, why the fuck would they get him? And you watch yesterday, why the fuck would they get him? I mean, that's a dude maybe 15 years ago in the Premier League would probably be like one of the top center forwards. But not right now. You could tell a couple of times where he got the ball and anybody he makes me look fast. Anybody who can move fast with the ball would probably cause trouble with us. But Robbo was catching up with him from like 20 yards back. Why would they even sign that guy? That made like zero sense. I mean, he's the kind of guy right now, I think you can maybe throw in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And say, we're going to be crossing the ball and back and forth. So hopefully you'll bring something. Because that's all he did in the World Cup.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing that someone who is 6'7" was invisible on the pitch, right? Like, you would think that, like, you're supposed to see this guy, and players like Van Dijk and Konate make him look smaller than 6'7", which is crazy to think. But absolutely, what Paul was saying, especially as a 10, if you have someone like Weghorst in there, you are just the intent is to play down the wings and then send it into the box and just land the ball on his head all game. But you are expecting him to create from a role that isn't made for him. Maybe I think. And it's not a dig at the MLS as much as we
fire away.
I think he would make a great 10 in the MLS, because I was watching the Fire game over the weekend, and the pace of these players, that's sort of something that would work for him. Him and Shaq can make a very great pairing. But yeah, it just doesn't make any sense.
I think it's just odd that I was just thinking this now. I mean, like, if I gave you a puzzle, right? Anybody, like, you don't even have to be a soccer person. And I'm like, okay, here are the three guys you have: Rashford, Weghorst, Fernandes. Where do you think they would be? Like, leave a number 10 spot open. I'm going to leave a cam open, a striker, and a left wing. And I'm like, here, put the puzzle pieces together. I think only Ten Hag takes Weghorst, puts him in and then puts Fernandes on the list.
Maybe he just...
Did I get that wrong? Like, is that wrong?
Maybe it was like a blind puzzle where you just take the name, place it and just this is where we go.
Maybe he lost a bet or something like that. They're like, if I lose the bet, I make your front three or something like that.
Do we look into gambling? I mean, was there a big bet place somewhere, guys? Is Ivan Toney working with Ten Hag on the side? I mean,
Bickler says I would make a great tenant.
This is Wednesday training. If there's no midweek game, you just you take your position out of the hat, and then you train for the next 2 days to see how that works, and then you produce.
And I don't know, like, you would think as a player when you're going out there, that probably doesn't make sense to you either. And I'm sure they practice it during the week or something, but you'll be like, man, this don't make any sense. Like if I'm going out and I'm like from being center back, I'm suddenly like 10, and the guy who should be like the striker is playing in my position and stuff, I'd be like, this ain't gonna work, but okay, let's see what happens. And then as it goes south, you'll be like, well, we fucking knew this, didn't we? Like, this is not gonna work. And you would almost be tempted, like, dude, get your ass up here. I'm gonna come back and play D, kind of a thing. But I think there was nobody on the field to stop the bleeding. And like, because when your leader gets petulant instead of almost like aggressive, I'd rather see my captain do a stupid tackle and get a red. I'm not condoning it, but I'd rather see that than what we just watched, where he's just like hanging out.
And going back to, I mean, after it gets 3 or 4-0, and then you're just thinking back to last year when it was 5-0 and 4-0 in both matches, where do you start caring? Like I know some of these players weren't there last year. Bruno was, though. Bruno definitely was there. And for him to be able to play in a match twice last year where they got absolutely destroyed, and granted they won back in August, whatever, fine. That was after Ronaldo was dropped and Maguire was dropped, and that was kind of the changing of the guard, if you will. And it's kind of amazing that even after all of that, he would not care still.
I mean, the dude does look like a rat. So he was asking to be subbed as the captain. That's wild. I mean, who leaves the boat first? And there you go. He was like, I'm out of here. This is getting ugly out here. Can I come back? Can I sit there? It looks cozy over there. And that's what's, like this. I mean, like I say, to any fan, to see that somebody do that as a captain is obnoxious. And my brother was like, get him the fuck out of this team. Like, is that the attitude? I mean, you made him a captain, so he's a future building block, is how you're saying it. I honestly, if they wanted to, so let me ask you this. I guess let's get to Sparky's point first, but not to get overexcited, but if teams give up space and try to play against us, we usually win. And that's the thing, United is not going to, unless you got Mourinho, they're not going to totally sit back. But after a while, you got to do damage control and avoid the 7-0. I think,
Absolutely.
If they lost 4-0, and then maybe we'll nick one, man, maybe 4-1, it'll be semi-respectable. But the 7-0, especially on a team that was kind of building pieces together, trying to build themselves back, I think this kind of like pushes them back another. Like you're going to need another 2 months now to get back to where you were now, because the last 2 months, they really built that up. I'll argue that, some of their wins were kind of lucky in some ways, or like last minute goals, or like coming back and stuff like that. But as a team that's building up, you can take that as a building block and say, hey, we refuse to win, we play till the end and stuff. When something like this happens, it slaps you back and you were like, wait, was that really luck then, or was that like, did our mindset change? So I think it kind of like puts some doubt. But going back to Fernandez, in terms of a market right now, if they did say, get this guy out of here, what kind of a captain is this? I'm shocked that I don't hear that from other United fans, to be honest with you. You did hear a lot from pundits because anybody who's ever played the game takes that as, you got to be shitting me when they watch that. But what do you think his market value is? I mean, even Bickler, I don't think is spending the money now to bringing him over. And, along with Bickler, I'm not just throwing this on Bickler. I mean, I don't think you can argue his class and what he does as a player.
Yeah.
But as he played more, like when he first came in and we saw him as a player, people were bashing him, I thought, just because he was a United guy. And I know he's like a good player. But at the same time, over time, we've seen all these other qualities or lack thereof. So where do you think is like, does any team in the Premier League say, we'll deal with his unprofessionalism, just give us this production?
I think so. I mean, because Yeah, because you've seen cases of that, and you'll have to excuse me melting into the sun right now. Um, I've gone from pretty dark and dull this morning before we started to now incredibly bright and transparent. So maybe I don't know the rapture. I don't know. So I think there will be there will be clubs that take a chance on him. They won't maybe give him the same licenses and treatment for getting away with certain things. If you have something like a play like that where you just give up entirely, you could see some consequences. You get benched the next game. I mean, it's not like, and it's not for load management. It's out of like just not trying. And so I think market value. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see him go for, because it's the Premier League and he's been in the league and he's shown that he can produce in the league. 60 to 80 million, I think is
no way. You think so?
I'm with
in the Premier League,
today's market, yeah, I
guess
think
the
so.
market is brutal.
I think so.
That's an interesting conversation because I don't know how or do.
Well, let's see.
I can see teams justifying it for themselves, saying it's almost like the New England Patriots. If we get him into our locker room, he'll be a totally different guy. Or if he's not, he'll fuck off, which, Patriots have done over the last decade kind of thing. I just don't know if they would see it as that, saying, once he comes to our environments, he'll be a team player. That's because it's United kind of a deal. Because do you really want – because here's the thing. If you bring that guy at 50, 60 million, and if you're not in the top six, you got to figure he's one of your top paid players. So you're not going to really bench him if you're, I don't know, like give me a team, Fulham or Brentford or whoever signs him. You're not going to bench him because he's sulking, because you kind of knew what you were getting. Bickler says he'll go north of 50 easy as well.
I mean, just because transfer market, his current value right now.
There is Freddie Mercury's profile.
Updated. Yeah. November 3rd of 2022 was at 75 million. So, I mean, I think 60 to 80. He's still only 28. He won't turn 29 until next season. I mean, it's not the youngest thing in the world, but it's still, prime enough. I think if a team really wanted to, they would spend 60, 80 million on him.
Give me a team. Sparky says Chelsea will buy him for 120. Which is the only scenario that probably makes sense. But give me a team.
I mean, does it have to be?
Still go to a contender. Which team will fork out 60 to 80? I mean, yeah. I mean, like I say,
does it have
if
to
you
be
look
Premier
at
League?
The player himself, that price tag is probably accurate to me. But which top team would right now say, "Yep, 80 million will take his lack of professionalism"?
I could see him at a top Spanish club. I could see him at PSG, that he just mentioned, possibly.
But no, I'm saying Premier League.
In the Premier League, okay. See,
how the turntables have, because I can see PSG, and like Bickler says, Atletico. I think a league like that, yes. In the Premier League, who would say, "Yeah, we'll make you one of the highest guys"? Just I don't think that. I mean, not being a captain, because here's the thing: if you're not a captain, there's a captain next to you saying, "What the fuck you doing?" When that happens, I guarantee you, if Trent or Robo or I don't know, name a player does that for Liverpool, Hando is in his face, Klopp is in his face.
Yeah.
So how is he gonna take that? Bickler says Newcastle or Arsenal. Really? See, this is an interesting.
I mean, are we calling Newcastle a contender now? I think we've kind of realized they're kind of tumbling. So I didn't know if they were.
They're considered. They're going to be more and more, I guess.
Hopefully, yeah.
Because of the money, but.
I mean, in a weird way, I could also see him at City. Like in a really weird alternate universe, I could see him at City too.
And you're thinking, if like for example, if it's City, it would be because Pep's kind of like doing the, like I say, going back to the Belichick thing, saying like, "Oh, I'll straighten him out. He will play for me. He'll be the right guy for me." Or like when he comes in this environment, he'll know there's no other better, and he'll sit on the back. And there's another thing. I guess maybe a team like Newcastle or City, you can afford to bench a guy you paid 60, 74 because you do it regularly. I just feel like, if he goes to a team, I mean, PSG. I don't know about Portugal because I think he's too good to go back to Portugal. Not maybe in like the next contract, like in 2-3 years. But yeah, he says, can you imagine Bruno and KDB? Yeah, I mean that is like grandpa. They're like, like they're gonna just sit. You can just see those two sitting down and bitching about. Do you see Haaland run left instead of right on that one? That was ridiculous, man, and stuff like that. But
just wait until your teammates call you old Bruno.
Sparky's one game does make a player shit or good. He has a good season so far. I don't think his playership or him as a player can be questioned. I mean, some do, but I take that as just hating. And that's kind of like Bickler has been against, and I have been as well. Because I think as a player, he's a brilliant player. But this is not one game. We've seen this over and over and over again. He has a shit attitude.
He does have a leader.
I mean, this has been like proven over game and game and game now. They shouldn't seven be on the same pitch, says Saeed. Good one. I mean, yeah, that's the thing. It's just like an auto. So let's talk about this a little bit. I was wondering what the hell happened, and that will be the only downfall and a tragic downfall if we got injured. Because I did not see the odd dude initially in the celebration because I had like two dogs jumping up for me because they were really getting in the rhythm of getting snacks after every goal. But I did not see it initially that a fan came over. That would have been bad. And Klopp, I mean, if Klopp would have probably looked like he was going to kill him, and I don't blame him because that's one thing that he gets really furious at when you don't take your support in a positive way.
Yes, especially if he was a Liverpool fan, because I'm trying to pull up the video here. You can see it. Someone from the stands was recording the celebrations after the goal, and you can see that the fan just slipped while he was trying to get in on the celebration, which, I mean, I know I'm not justifying his actions at all. It was just a really bad consequence of what he was doing. So if you want to talk about it for a little bit, I found it. Never mind. So sorry.
Oh, you're like, if you can't fill some airspace, I'm going to see if I can find this over here.
Okay. So here's the celebration. I'm going to do this. Look at me go.
Look at you. Such a pro. And this always happens, right? The fan can never stop himself. This always just jump on top, man. You're already doing something illegal. Just get in the pile. Don't try to. What are you gonna suddenly stop and shake hands? Because this happens anytime a fan tries to do this. By the way,
yeah. So I mean, and it's just especially with rain and how it's going. Yeah, that could have seriously hurt someone.
Oh, Bickler giving you shit is hilarious.
Hey, man, giving the people what they want.
And yeah, by the way, Jones getting injured. I was like, why don't you put Ox in there too? So get Ox and Keita in there too, because this would be a great story of them getting injured out of this ordeal kind of thing. And getting rolled up on is an easy way to tear an ACL, Bickler says. And I agree. I mean, that could have been really bad. And like I say, this is not the first time we've seen this when a fan is running and obviously it's watered. So they just like freaking take a slip the moment they try to stop. And yeah, it was, I'll be honest, I'm shocked it doesn't happen more.
Right. I mean, and I think, sorry. And it's more frustrating that it's a fan of your own club too, especially if someone ended up getting really hurt, because you could kind of see the look on his face after Klopp was yelling at him. You could maybe tell a little bit of regret there. You would hope that, he would have thought about that before he went in on the celebration, but it's never and then you get the lifetime ban, and it's just, I don't know, it's not worth it. What is it going to do for you, honestly?
I mean,
2 seconds of fame.
I was in that historic game, kids. That's when I got banned.
Grandpa, you were the asshole that almost hurt Robbo?
I guess, yeah. You can see me. I guess you can kind of freeze. Well, you can't even freeze the points where he can show his grandkids where he's in the celebration because he's
on the ground.
He can't even be like, see, I was right there.
Pause it like right outside the box. Like, see me running right there? That's me. 2
seconds later, don't worry about that. Don't Google the video. I'm sure Google will still be around them. But Well, here's an easy one. Can anyone think of why Carvalho isn't getting minutes? Well, I guess I can flip that question after seeing what we're seeing. Which, by the way, when that starting 11 came up, I was like, well, this is the future 11, I guess. I just don't know where Diaz would fit in, or it would just be like a perfect rotation on the left-hand side kind of a deal. But I think our initial thought of Carvalho being Bobby's replacement did not really pan out. So it's almost like we got a taller, faster, stronger version of him in the form of Gakpo.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would have said as well. I think we all wanted Fabio Carvalho to be the Bobby, and we thought he was the next heir apparent, right? He would be able to sit under Bobby, be able to learn a few things, and eventually take over for him. But this is not the right system for his type of player. And we said that about Elliott potentially too. I mean, I think Elliott had an absolutely amazing match yesterday, and was just getting into all sorts of space, connecting play from back to front. And there are moments where we could still see maybe Elliott, it doesn't really have a good natural position in this system, but maybe Carvalho's downfall is that this doesn't fit him at all. He's not that kind of player that we thought. And there's a chance that he could still grow into that player, right? I mean, he's still really young. It's not like we took a chance on a 26-year-old player who's pretty steadfast in how he plays. And there's still time to mold that. But the question is, how much is he losing by not playing? If he would have just still been at Fulham this year, getting all that Premier League experience, who knows? Wouldn't have had the winner against Newcastle early in the season, but that could have been someone else. But yeah, so the only thing is it's tough because of the experience that he's missing out on. But I think we're just learning that Gakpo is sort of the guy that Klopp sees taking that position moving forward.
I think so. I mean, I don't know if like a loan is in the works for him, or he would be the depth guy. He would be the Taki moving forwards, like comes in the League Cup games and stuff like that and gets his experience that way. But I mean, yeah, it's too early to call it a failed experiment.
I mean, it was $8 million. Like, it's just, it's also, it wasn't that much money. I know,
I wish we had more signings like that where, it's only 10, 15. It could end up being 80, or you might actually turn around and sell them for like 15, 20 again.
Right. Or if you end up losing a couple million on it, it's not, you're not always banking on these 60, 70, $80 million transfers and then either getting zero from it or getting a bunch of trophies. Like that's a big floor to ceiling. Whereas you can level that out a little bit more if you take more of a risk on those 6 to 20 million tier guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's too early. It just looks like this is the future right now. Like what we're seeing is the long-term plan. But, with Bobby out of the rotation, so obviously you're going to have Diaz, and there's still room for, I mean, we've been talking about this right-sided guy, like somebody who can play right wing forever, for somebody like that to come in the summer, because obviously we do not have it. I don't think we like Elliott over there as much, and none of the other guys we have can really play that right wing the way we want it played. So, because I mean, still Mo's playing like ridiculous minutes, and he wants to. I think that's his thing. But let's talk about that, because I think that's a good discussion right there.
Yeah. So with Mo passing Fowler in the Premier League, we have this now come up. Spotlight. I was gonna ask you, because
that was like
a
scaring this kind of good shock effect. I like it.
This is the let me put some respect to Ian Rush's name. Scroll up there. All right, this is the top 12 here of all-time scorers for Liverpool in all competitions, and we see Mo sitting at 178, 5 behind Fowler, 8 behind Stevie, and then we see Billy Liddell up at 228. So the question is, this is all dependent on how long he stays, of course. Where does Mohamed Salah end on the list of all-time scorers?
I put him as playing at least 2 more seasons the way he is. I know a lot of talk about, he's the only guy we can sell to get money and stuff, but I don't think that's the game plan here. We basically made our choice. We got our money from the Mane side of it. I don't think we're looking to do the same, because like I just said, there's nobody who can play behind the guy, leave alone play instead of him. Right. I put him at least 2 more seasons, so I'm putting him as finishing 3rd in this list. And we kind of looked earlier that crazy season, he had like 44 or something like that, but he's normally about like 25 to 30 on a normal season, on an average season
Yeah.
across all competitions. So even if he does that, he's automatically kind of like right up there in 2 seasons. So I put him there as number 3.
Yeah, because you would just above Hodgson.
Just above Hudson, basically. I say
Yeah.
he finishes like 245-ish. 245, 250 is where he finishes.
Yeah, I think we've kind of seen it going back to his interview yesterday. He knew that the record was on his mind, because you could tell that there was something that he was thinking about something. So I think if he gets to that 228 and then it hits 235, I think he will do everything he can to move up to 242. I feel like he's that type of player who would want to cement himself as a top 3 scorer of all time for this club. He is that kind of player. And if he does continue being on that 30 goal trajectory, let's say, after 2 seasons, you 60, that's 238. That's just a few off of Hodgson there. So I think that's something that's realistically possible if he stays until 2025, 2026.
Yeah, I mean, here's one thing that I found shocking, and I really like it. And people who kind of question him, I think, should put that in perspective. This dude is a very, very driven dude. That's why the jersey came off, because he's had this on his sights for quite some time, and he kind of like he's a guy that said, sometimes you get these players, either they're downplaying it or they really don't fucking know it, where they're like, oh, like they tell him like, you broke this record. They're like, oh, really? I didn't know and shit. Freaking Mo knows, and
yeah.
he kind of says, that's what I want to do. You could kind of tell he had his, eyes set on this record. So I would not be shocked if he is listening in right now saying, number 3 at the least, that's my goal now, is to beat like Gordon kind of a deal. And I think that's pretty impressive to hear that from a guy, because everybody was like, oh, he took the contract, now he's sitting and stuff like that. This is what he's looking at, and I'm really liking the chemistry of the front 3 in terms of, I know it's easy to get along and everything when you go from 3-0 to 4-0 to 5-0 and stuff like that, but even before that, you can kind of tell these guys are kind of happy for themselves and kind of like assisting them each other and stuff like that. I mean, they're all, the weird thing is all 3 are strikers now, because Gakpo looks to finish as well. But he can also do hold up play and like passing and those, like, it can be the wall and stuff like that in a give and go. But I like the chemistry overall. But I think Sparky was talking about that earlier, and that's what I want to kind of like finish up with. How much do we take out of this? Because like we said, any other team with some self-respect and an actual captain would probably be like, you know what, guys, this game is over. Let's do damage control. And then the game would end 4-0, 4-1 or something, because we would get kind of like lazy in the back and lose the ball or something. So now we play Bournemouth away, early game, which is our favorites. Do you think this team carries that? Do they think, I mean, because it was always like this midfield with a week's rest, can we have the same energy week in and week out?
Yeah, I mean, and the early games are always so weird, right? I mean, and especially coming off a big win like this, you've already beaten Bournemouth 9-0 earlier in the season. This is the sort of trap game that people like to, I like to use that term of, okay, you have a lot of confidence. You've already beaten this team by more goals than the team that you just beat, 7-0. Yeah. And when you go into this game thinking, okay, well then are they going to show up? Like, do we even need to worry about? And this is away, right? This is not an Anfield. So, I would hope that this carries over. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit more rotation. I think depending on how Klopp feels, or maybe Klopp wants to just ride this 11, and wants to keep building on that foundation that they've had this last game. But I wouldn't be surprised to see some rotation. My only concern is the complacency of, okay, we beat this team 9-0. We just came off 7-0. We're flying. Everything's fine. And then, we lose 1-0. Like to Forest away. There's one of those moments where just you want to make sure that it's good. And looking at the goals that have been scored, I think Liverpool has scored 42 goals in the year, or 44. 36% of all Premier League goals for Liverpool have come from just 2 games, guys. Just those 2 games. 16 of those 44 goals or whatever it is have
crazy.
come in 2 games. So, I mean, there is a lot more to work on, and there is still enough to build off of. But it's exciting because, like you said, we saw a lot of fluidity. We saw these guys playing for each other. We didn't see them as individual pieces. This was I mean, it's happened a few times this year where they looked really good, but this is more of the couple of years ago where we just saw this machine that just worked consistently. You never kind of felt any first half, a little leggy. I know I made some comments about Nunez looking like just maybe having some sort of knock, or just maybe I don't know, just bloated in a way, because he just wasn't really moving the way that he typically does. But then that second half just shot everything out of the water.
Yeah. I think, I kind of liked what I heard after the game, because I think, like what Mo said and stuff like that, but they are still human. You don't know how it's going to affect the psychology. The good thing is, I feel like the people that were on the field, if this was created with Pasecic, Carvalho and stuff like that, I think I would worry a bit more than I am now in terms of like how this will relax them a little bit. Everybody out there knows everything can change on a dime because they've seen it themselves, because you had Fab, Hendo. I mean, aside from Elliott, there's, young players, but young players with a lot of experience that will kind of like have seen it all. And I think the back four doesn't change moving forward unless we do like a Champions League game back to back and stuff like that, which, I mean, hey, this gives everybody hope. I know everybody was going crazy yesterday, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's not even like worry about that. Let's just enjoy this and make fun of our brothers and just
I was ready. I know some people will like to say that he told us all this stuff already, but after the Madrid game, I didn't want to have hope for the second leg, because I was just like, just
take me to the
take me out back. It's fine. And then this happens, and then I'm dragged back again, and I'm like, the roller coaster of emotions. And obviously, I'm not gonna say I didn't want to come back at the Bernabeu after the Madrid game, but it was one of those moments. I don't think there were some people who were like, we'll come back in Madrid. Fine. That's false confidence, whatever it is. But this does put a little tickle, in some excitement for a possible crazy comeback situation. And at least, maybe the hope is good, because if anything, we can always look back on this.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, like, say, I don't know, like that was not even, I know, like, it was mentioned and stuff. I was like, you know what? This is kind of like too big for me. I think Gordon, who should be joining us this Wednesday morning again, like messaged me yesterday and said, like, I'll take the score. And we said, like, you need the score line in Madrid now, he said. And I was like, honestly, man, this is huge for me right here. This kind of like in some ways makes the season. And I think kind of like could be a huge stepping stone. I know we've been doing well, a lot of clean sheets and stuff, which is nice to see. But like these couple of wins back to back now, because it's the same people on the field. This was a lot about confidence. The problem is, last time we had this run, we had the Madrid game, and kind of like what I was talking about with United, like kind of pushing you back another month. So that's why I feel like this Bournemouth game is pretty big. I mean, obviously the 3 points are important, but in terms of building on that momentum and getting that mojo back, because you could tell that when this team feels confidence, they kick ass. And those chances get converted. That fourth goal, which reminded me of the fourth goal he scored in that 5-0 game, taking that like one time
with his right foot,
confidence and the scoreline, right?
Yeah.
If that game is 0-0, he's trying to control that, maybe turning around, dancing a little bit with it and stuff like that. And that's when this team plays with confidence and without thinking, I think they're 10 times better. And that's what I want to see moving forward. And that only comes with kind of like winning back to back to back and getting the mojo and stuff. But very happy weekend, very happy dogs. Leo was in shock because he has not seen this in a while. He was at the Bournemouth game, but he has not seen it. I mean, Bournemouth game, I was just kicking back. This one, every goal, first 2, 3, after the fourth, it was just laughter and like dog rolling around with the dogs on the ground, snacks flying everywhere. And Stitch is like, bro, it used to be like this every freaking week. Like he's telling Leo. Yeah, good memories to share all around. So we'll talk a lot more about that stuff tonight on the podcast with Gally and Bickler. Even they can't be crabby, I'm guessing.
God, let's hope.
Yeah, let's hope. But we'll find a way. We'll get him crabby. There's always trivia to bring those back down to earth. I use that worst case scenario. But Polish Prince, thanks a lot. And as always, we will be back tonight, 8 o'clock Central with the gang. And then I will be back Wednesday morning.
7 o'clock Central?
Is it 7 o'clock Central, isn't it? It's 8 o'clock Eastern. You guys know what time it is, damn it. But just be there. We'll talk more about this game, as well as like looking ahead to next weekend and see our top 4 chances and stuff like that. The door has opened wide.
Top 4 title. Let's go.
Title, yes, content quad. No.
It's a title chase now.
Have a great Monday. No better way to start the week than that Sunday. So it has to be an awesome week regardless. So have a great week, everybody. See you guys tonight. Take care.